Hey, hi, hello, welcome to episode 53 of Trail Society, brought to you by our friends over at Freetrail. I'm Corrine Malcolm.
I'm Keely Henninger.
And I'm Hillary Allen.
And we're all awake on a Monday morning. We're doing it, team. Thanks for being so generous and letting me sleep in a little bit.
Of course, I think you deserve it.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But yeah, it was a wild, hot, long weekend full of many good things and many hard things and everything in between. Yeah, Keely, did you
100-mile Stoke?
Post 100-mile Stoke, post 100-mile like blah, post 100-mile Stoke. Keely, did you finish your round of secondary apps? You feeling good?
I have one more to get out today, and then I'm just waiting on getting the rest. I have like 4 that I haven't got the secondary for yet. So Otherwise, yeah, I'm almost done.
Crushing the med school application game. That is such a long, tedious process.
It's so insane. I've been putting them all in a Word doc, like all the answers to everything, just because I want to see like how many actual words it has been. And right now I'm at, hold on, 36,412 words.
Just like a small book, you know.
It's insane. Luckily, some of them are repeats. Like you can kind of use some of the essays for some other apps, but it's still just like insane.
The hoops we jumped through. Hilly, you were kind of bopping around this weekend.
Yeah.
How's life? How's some of the van life? How's some of the home life treating you?
Yeah, it's been a bit hectic, but it was good. I was over at one of the races, a High Lonesome 100, crewing and pacing an athlete of mine, but she didn't have the best day. She ended up dropping out, but that's okay. I
texted with her and I was like, dude, it's like me after Madeira. Like I was the happiest DNFer ever after that race. Like sometimes it's just like the right call is the right call.
Exactly. And I think she knew it. And like, she kind of went through all the strategies that like we had discussed of like, okay, like, let's really figure this out. Like, is this the right decision? And, she was pretty at peace with it. So then we had some like cool chats and like hung out after and, got to see some other people come in and yeah, there's a lot of people out of that race. So it was pretty fun.
Yeah. Caleb Efta and that crew puts on a really phenomenal event. So add it to your bucket list, people. High Lonesome 100-mile seems like a good deal. We'll talk more about that race in just a little bit. And before we dive into some results, we have to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors who's made this thing happen from the beginning. And that's the folks over at AG1. That's right. AG1, that green powder, the green mysterious drink, something that I've actually, I like kind of eased up on the back end of last week just to like I'm like extra cognizant about my fiber intake pre-race, but back on the AG1 this week as I mostly eat pastries, drink coffee, and I'm in the smoothie game in a big way. But if you would like to add AG1 to your life or to your smoothies, you can go over to www.athleticgreens.com/trail society. And there you can get a 1-year free supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first order. Go try some today and let us know what you think about the product. But we got to talk some results because there were some wild, crazy things that happened over the weekend. I feel like it was a solid race weekend with some really big mountain hundreds in particular taking place in the western part of the US is what we're focused on predominantly. You were over at High Lonesome, Hilly, I guess kind of, can you walk us through just like those quick highlights of like, there were some really, really cool results that came out of the front end of that pack.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like you mentioned, Caleb Efta, he's the race director and he's done a really good job at promoting women participation in this race. So like Elise Mortis, the person who I was crewing for and potentially pacing for at this race, she got in off the wait list because he's made it trying to get like 50-50 percentage of women versus men on the start line. So there's quite a few women in this race. And you'll kind of see this in the results that basically the top 3 women were all in the top 10 overall finishers. But I do want to touch on the overall winner of the race. That's Jimmy Elam, and he won it in 1942, a new course record by I think over an hour and a half. Previously set by Ryan.
Did Ryan Smith have it?
Smith. Yes, Smith. So it's like it's a very solid time. And this course is like, it's all at high altitude. It's very exposed.
The first 50K is like particularly hard. It
First
like
50K is
it doesn't like get
10,000 feet.
easier, but it gets a little bit easier on the back part of the race. The first
Yeah.
50K is like a real butt kicker.
Yeah. It's basically like they have a 50K course, like an actual separate race in September, and it's basically the first climb of this thing. So it's a pretty intense race. And then and so then for the women's race, Georgia Porter ended up winning, and she was 4th overall. And Marissa Watson was 2nd. And Marissa was like leading pretty much the entire race, but so she was 2nd, and there was only 17-minute gap. And so she was 5th overall. And yeah, so they had it was an epic battle until mile 85, and then Georgia kind of took it for the last little bit.
In her debut 100-mile. By the way, too, like first ever 100 for Georgia Porter. So really cool to see. And I think we know her more as like a fast ground runner, and she like crushed it in a mountain 100 debut.
Yeah. So that was really
scary. Cool. That's terrifying.
Hey, but like the faster, flatter stuff, it translates. It's like that speed. We've seen it for like, the qualifiers for the Lake Sonomas, and they go over to Europe and then they crush the mountainous races over there. But then there's Lindsay McDonald. She was 3rd, and she was also 9th overall. So that's a pretty strong showing for all the ladies at that race.
Yeah, super, super strong. And then we should give a shout out to Sarah Ostawoski. Yeah. Works, I think, at Nike, but lives in Flagstaff. Crushed Coconut 250. Crushed Uray. She took over the lead only at mile 80, I think, in the women's race, but she set a new course record and finished 3rd overall at the Uray 100-mile race. So quick shout out to Sarah, because that was a phenomenal performance. Meredith Edwards had the course record previous to that, and I think Alyssa Clark might have had the record previous to that. So Uray's seen like a bunch of big mountain heavy hitters come through. It's got like 44,000 feet of climbing or something. Whoa. Over 100 miles. Dang. Yeah, it's got a super long cutoff time. They start Friday morning, and I think they have until like Sunday at some point in time to finish. It's like a 40+ hour cutoff time, I think. Super, super gnarly, challenging. I think like her time was like 33 something hours. Like you're out there for a hot second. Wow. So give out a shout out to Sarah. And then quickly wanted to brush through Cascade Crest. We'll talk about it more in a second. But Yitka Wynn, who people probably won't know, but this is her 4th win at Cascade Crest, her 5th finish, her 4th win. She has the course has changed a little bit over time. This is an out and back version of the course, so it's not the normal course. But she's got the course record on the looped version of the course right now too. She's a mom. She like works as an editor for REI. She's just a total badass. And then Amelia Boone finished 2nd. I ran with her most of the day. And I think this was by far her like best 100-mile like run. Like she struggled on the technical downhills, but like ran like some of the PCT, which was 60 miles of it, like really, really, really well. So super cool to see. And then I snuck in 3rd place, got it done. And then shout out to Brandon on the men's side, broke the out and back course record on this, finishing in just under 20 hours, like out by himself in front. And he just ran such a smart race. He's a Washington guy. So have to give Brandon a little bit of a shout out there. He ran like 19:57, I think. And Yitka was like 6th overall this year. I think Amelia was also in the top 10, I think. And then I was like 12th or 13th. So we had a great competitive women's group at the front of that race, keeping it pretty tight for very, very far into the race. But before we talk more about that, we've got to give 2 more shout outs. The first is Speed Goat. And that is the shout out specifically is to Helen Mino Faulkner, who is just like on fire this season, like a Tahoe area gal, part of that North Face development team. Hopefully this is like sealing her a official like bigger contract in the future. But like she's my like, oh man, this person better get a UROY top 10 nomination this year. Like has just had like stellar performances, predominantly in like the 50K to 70, 80K ish distance.
What else has she ran? She did Broken Arrow, and then
she did Broken Arrow. She won that race in Argentina. The UTMB race there. She was 2nd like overall behind Cody Lind. Ran and beat Emily Hoggood there. And then she will be back at CCC this year. Part of that like strong women's group going to CCC. So I think if she can pull off
this be her longest race, CCC?
She did CCC last year, I believe, as
Okay.
well. I think she finished 14th or something. She was part of that. I don't think she finished top 10. I think she finished right behind Tara Fraga. I'm probably
Yeah.
wrong. Someone will slide into our DMs about it, but that's okay. But yeah,
And I feel like everyone talks about her and says she has the best attitude out there too.
oh yeah. I mean, she's been at Broken Arrow a bunch. I think she's run the Triple Crown before.
I ran against her like when I did the Triple Crown a couple years ago, and we passed each other at the very last, and then like she passed me on the last downhill. But like she's just so fun. We're like hooting and hollering and like shouting each other on. She's just so nice. Yeah.
Yeah, she's the same coach as MK Sullivan, I think, as well. I think Rick Floyd coaches both of them. He used to live in Reno, lives out east now. So yeah, she's just a solid mountain crusher. But yeah, like great to see her pull off like a really solid victory at Speed Goat over the weekend. And then just this morning, again, we're recording on a Monday, a week ahead of when this is going to come out, and the Tahoe 200 just finished, and the first woman to win the Tahoe 200 outright. Because remember, Courtney almost won it outright, but kind of got snuck at the very end, or like almost closed, and then the guy like had a final wind and brought it in, and she was second overall. So Claire Banworth, who's from the UK, I believe, just finished fifth at Hard Rock, like not that long ago. Like we're all still recovering from Hard Rock, I feel like, as a media outfit hangover. Just finished fifth at Hard Rock, but just won the Tahoe 200 outright in 62 hours, 29 minutes. And then she's supposedly, before her flight home, gonna go do a little fast pack on the Colorado Trail. And she was like, yeah, I hope that I can do it in like 10 days, which I'm pretty sure would be like one of the fastest known times on that route if she does in fact fast pack it in 10 days. So just like a stellar long trail.
I think,
hauler.
yeah, from the fastest known time podcast, and I was doing that, I think the Colorado Trail was like one of the nominations, and the women's fastest known time is, I think, just under 10 days for the Colorado Trail.
Yeah, and I don't know if she'd be doing it supported or unsupported or self-supported. More, I feel like there's a lot of self-supporting on the Colorado Trail.
I mean, that's
where
what
they
makes
like cash, where they cache things. Yeah.
Well, you don't even need to cache anything. You literally pass through so many towns on the route, so it's like you can just refuel from the towns.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of self-support that goes on for that
Yeah.
FKT. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm assuming she's doing, is self-supported. But yeah, really making the most out of her trip to the States. A little Hard Rock, a little Tahoe 200, little Colorado Trail. Wow. Just like a casual July.
That's wild. What has she done before this?
I feel like she's done like the winter spine race in the UK. She's predominantly like ultra long.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Running as a human. Yeah, but she's not very old. I feel like she's in her like early to mid 30s. And is just like very, very solid when it comes to mountain performances. And mostly like, those hard 100 miles plus hard long. Yeah, I think she's in her early 30s. But yeah, is into kind of those stage race, multi-day, 200-mile style pushes, and runs a lot. I think for training, a lot of it is like her racing essentially. So just super, super impressive. I don't know where she's headed to next, but she's someone to keep an eye out on, particularly if you're into the weird 160K plus discipline. Claire's probably going to be there. But I think that's it on the results side. I know it's kind of quick hitting, just like highlighting a few things, but wanted to give shout outs to those like just really stellar performances that we got to witness a little bit firsthand over the weekend. You all are amazing and just taking on such uniquely challenging events all over the place. So let's hit some news. And right now there's a lot of stuff going on. There's the Tour de France Femmes going on, which we're not going to talk about today, but I'm so excited to talk about like the media numbers on the backside of it, just like because we did that last year. And I think it'll be cool to kind of recap the 8-day women's stage race, probably on our next episode. So stay tuned for that. But the Women's World Cup is also going on right now. And Keely, you sent along a little snippet of news coming from that side of sport.
Yeah, the Australian women's national football team just put a post out, and they were basically talking about how they've sold more jerseys ahead of the 2023 Women's World Cup than the men's team, both during and since their World Cup, which is just super cool. And I think they were showing this post just kind of to highlight how women's sports can gain traction when given the bandwidth too. So like when given resources, they actually can get as much, support as the men's race or the men's sport too. And then this kind of came out after a post where they'd also showcased that their stadium was completely booked for the Australian game, which
I
is
love
just
it.
so cool.
There was some post too, and I forgot to like actually snag it for the podcast, but it was like the GDP value of like the Taylor Swift Eras concert tour. And it's like the amount of money that that tour will bring in is like larger than the GDP of like many nations.
Oh my gosh.
And like the monetary boost that she does to like a state for like hotel revenue, et cetera, is like something super insane. So we'll pull some of those numbers because I think it's like kind of wild.
Have you ever been to a Taylor Swift concert?
No, but she was in Seattle this weekend, and like I think like things were like, it was, I was grabbing a beer with a friend last night who was like delayed getting into town because of like Taylor Swift concert traffic. And then we were watching people walk to the light rail station in their Eras tour outfits, which was really, really cool
fun
to watch. I had a bunch of friends that went to the concert last night. So yeah, she was in town, which I think like there's a lot going on. Driving across the city was not anyone's fair game last night. But yeah, so just crushing it on all sides of things, sports, female musicians, etc. And the last bit of running news we want to talk about is that in the past week or so, the Pro Trail Running Association, we've announced a just kind of an athlete resource there were a lot of long conversations with a number of lawyers and a number of female athletes from all over the world, kind of discussing updating maternity leave policy and language within athlete contracts. And so this is available to anyone who's part of the PTRA. You have to log into the athletes side of the website, and then it's under resources. But essentially we can give you an overview of that. And this was also sent out to all the brand managers ahead of time as well. Like before this was published to the athletes or anyone else, like this was distributed to all brand managers within trail and ultra right now. So this is like in the hands of people who will be looking at contracts. But essentially they wanted to like, historically, I guess for people who don't know this, pregnancy has been deemed kind of like injury. And if you aren't able to perform, if you're like aren't able to race within 6 or 9 months of injury, essentially, or over that period of time, like brands have the right within your contract to terminate your contract, to withhold pay, to decrease your retainer, etc. It was very prevalent in road and track for a long time, but our contracts are oftentimes just like a slightly amended version of road and track contracts within companies. And so this language carries over to those trail and ultra contracts as well. And so in sitting down to kind of work through this, they wanted to talk more openly about maternity leave. And so specifically, that includes the athlete's right to exercise 18 months of maternity leave and up to 6 months of compassionate leave from the date of an athlete suffering a miscarriage. Just understanding that like people are going through big physical changes. And that is also divvied up a little bit differently too. Like you could say, okay, it's going to be, 9 months for being pregnant and 9 months to recover from pregnancy type of thing was the idea of that 18-month maternity leave window with like no fault to the contract. Kind of one of those clauses reads as, should an athlete determine that more time is necessary for athlete's physical health and or mental health, the sponsor and the athlete shall discuss in good faith while respecting the athlete's medical privacy and appropriate extension based upon the circumstance. In no circumstance shall athlete's maternity leave or compassionate leave extend beyond the agreement term. So it's protecting both the brand and the athlete. But I think it's like, it's been really kind of nice to have updated language, mostly because contract jargon is really confusing. And so having this is really beneficial. It goes on to say, acknowledging that mutual interest in keeping athletes' image active and captivating the public during maternity, the sponsor and athlete should collaborate to mutually agree prior with written consent to continue any existing commitments, et cetera, stated in the initial agreement, appearances, podcast appearances, social media activity, et cetera. Just kind of like honoring the athlete's like time of maternity while like recognizing that is like important both for the athlete's image and for the brand's image in regard to that athlete. And then child leave was another piece of the puzzle too. And this is what you've seen with the PTRA work with UTMB for their pregnancy policy, is that while we are acknowledging maternity and carrying a child is a really big physical and emotional task and like a long recovery period, we also want to acknowledge that surrogacy, adoption, the partner, paternity leave, or your partner is the one who's carrying, et cetera, that child leave is also on the table. And that is for both maternity and paternity leave. which basically there's a 16-week agreement there where essentially like they can exercise their right for up to 16 weeks of new child leave from the date, such as a new child formally joins the athlete's immediate family, which is once again a lot of legal jargon, but essentially just like recognizing that like starting a family, growing a family in any way, shape, or form is a big undertaking, both financially, emotionally, physically, etc. And trying to honor that. And I think that historically our contracts have either had these clauses or not had these clauses or not have not been enforced, et cetera. But this just kind of continues to add new protections to athletes' contracts, or at least open the door to have those conversations as well. Like I'm 33, I'm in year 2 of a 3-year contract. Like my next contract negotiation, like talking about potential pregnancy, like should be on the table. And I shouldn't be afraid to have that conversation with my sponsors. But it's like a reality as well of like, yeah, it's very possible that I will be pregnant in my next contract. How does my sponsor feel about that? How do I feel about that, et cetera? So having some sort of framework to at least start that conversation on with something like this from the PTRA, I think is a step in the right direction. And it was cool to like see a bunch of athletes kind of work together to with 2 different lawyers to figure some of this stuff out. So go PTRA. If you're an athlete who qualifies to be part of the PTRA, but you haven't figured out how to join or want to join, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions about the PTRA and kind of what we've been up to and how you can get involved, or if you should get involved, et cetera. There's very little you have to do, but we're hoping that we can improve our sport, not only for our generation, but for many generations to come down the road as well. I guess before we dive into the meat and potatoes, we have to give one more shout out. And that's to the feed. Does anyone have anything wonderful they want to say about the feed?
No, I just got some more, like, they had like a limited edition waffle flavor. I forget exactly what it was.
The cookies and cream was really good. And then the
There's
caramel was
another
really
one.
good. But I'm hoping that there's more coming down the road because I'm all about limited edition flavors.
What's the second one that you just said?
Caramel.
Maybe it was that one. It's so good. Yeah, I don't know.
Keely, what's been in your feed box most recently?
I think I said this last week. I've been like kind of a creature of habit lately. So I haven't really branched out, but I've been trying just like all different granolas in the breakfast area. So I try a new one every time. But this time I think I've gone through most. So I got the same RX brand again, which I thought was pretty good. I'm a big granola fan though. So I feel like I don't really discriminate.
Yeah, Steven's a granola guy in our household, so I feel like we're like our feed box is putting him in granola, which is good. I think he's got some co-residents who listen to this, so you guys can make fun of Steven for his granola habit in the ER anytime. But if you would like to also get a box from the feed or try a new product, you've got a race coming up, they've got new nutrition on the course that you've never tried before, be it hammer or goo or scratch, etc. You can go and get a one-off of that product to try ahead of your race, so that when you roll into an aid station and they're like, we have grape goo roctane, you know what you're in for, or orange creamsicle heat, or whatever I was drinking this weekend. You want to know what you're getting yourself into. So I think that being able to mix and match and try new products is a big deal, and being able to do that all in a one-stop shop at the feed makes that really very easy, very convenient, very possible. They ship super, super fast. So again, that's www.thefeed.com/Trail Society. You're looking at $60 over the course of the year in credit, doled out in $15 credit increments. That's a lot of money. That's like free bars. That's like, half a bag of protein, etc. Like there's money on the table here. So again, go over to www.thefeed.com/Trail Society and try something from the feed today. But enough about the feed. Let's talk about me.
Yeah, this is a perfect segue. Yeah, so I mean, done what this is, ta-da, we have in the meat and potatoes. It's your interview, Corrine. So we're going to talk to you about this thing that you did over the weekend. But before we get into that, how are you going? How are you doing? How are you feeling? How is the recovery post Cascade Crest?
I have to say, having a husband who's an emergency medicine physician is like really nice, because I mangled a few toes. I kicked, I think, every other rock on the back half of the course. And it turns out, generally speaking, this course is a loop, the Cascade Crest 100-mile race out of Easton, Washington. And the first 15 miles are really rocky and dusty and ruddy and just like gross. Well, when it's an out and back, those are also the back 15 miles of the course. And I found every single rock out there and kicked them all. And my toes were a little bit less than happy. So he's been a great medical provider in treating my toe wounds so that everything stays, top notch, tippy top, up to shape. But yeah, I also want to say I've never done a Friday morning 100-mile start, and finishing then on Saturday morning and like having a Saturday and then a Sunday was really nice. Like to not like be finishing Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon or evening and then rolling into a Monday morning. Like I'm all about Friday starts. Let's do it. Let's not go to work on Fridays and let's start our hundreds then, because it makes the rest of the weekend so much easier.
Yeah, the High Lonesome did that too. So, I mean, morning start or PM start? Do you want to do it like full Euro style or just kidding?
Yeah, no, there's definitely advantages and disadvantages to everything. I think
Right.
my next race will have a more European style start, but it's I'm doing okay. I've been horizontal a lot since the end of the race, napping and or just like laying on different surfaces, but I'm walking around okay. I can go downstairs, not sideways anymore. I can go down forwards. So I feel like I'm really starting to evolve as a human again.
It's a big milestone.
It's a huge milestone. Not having to like hold onto a handrail and go down sideways is like a huge quad milestone.
Yeah. Well, so before you started this race, I read your post about it, that you're pinning on your first 100-mile race bib since 2019. And we know that you've had some ups and downs with injury, moving across the country, getting married, some pretty big milestones. So how did it feel to kind of pip that bib on and like to toe the line at Cascade Crest? And was there anything like in particular kind of going through your mind? Because it can be kind of like a scary moment to be at a start line again.
Yeah, it's like super interesting because I was joking with someone that I'm on like the Olympic cycle of 100 miles where I'm just going to do one every 4 years apparently. I don't think that's the case, but it's kind of felt like that. And I've run long since then. Obviously, I did an 80-mile effort on TAM during the pandemic. I did a 171-mile effort on the TRT. But yeah, I haven't pinned a race. I haven't finished a 100-mile race since Western States 2019. And I haven't pinned a 100-mile race bib on since UTMB 2019. I've like since finished a couple shorter ultras. But yeah, like between the pandemic and injury, I had a lot of moments where I was like, man, like, do I do this anymore? Like, am I like I consider myself kind of like a 100-mile specialist. Like that's kind of like been my favorite area of racing. And I haven't done one in a long time. Like, am I still a 100-mile specialist? And so I think I had like, it felt really good to get like the monkey off my back, I think, of like ripping the Band-Aid off, getting to the start line, feeling like my body was feeling really normal ahead of it. Like, I think I told Keely this maybe in passing that like tapering felt really good for the first time in like 18 months because I feel like I actually did training and then like had a thing to taper from. Because I think getting to the start line at TDS last year, which did not go well, and I dropped out, and even getting to the start of both Madeira last year and this year, it was like I was just getting by with training. Like I felt like I was cramming for the exam. I didn't feel like I could taper because I didn't feel like I had actually done the training to get there. So that was like a whole like little piece of the puzzle. So I feel like that was a big deal to be like, oh, I'm actually ready to go to a race because I've done the prep for the race specifically. So that was huge, like a big milestone.
So, I mean, and with that, I think I want to get into the training too, because that's obviously like a big, like that is a big also hurdle to overcome just from, injuries. You feel like sometimes you can't get into that rhythm of actually training, adequately preparing. But do you think that racing on your home trails actually, did it help anything like with like mentally kind of knowing what you had in front of you, right? Like you knew the terrain, you kind of knew roughly where you're going if you haven't been in every single part of it. And this course this year was an out and back too. So you can kind of like see all parts of the course. Did that mentally help you at all?
I will say though, on the way back, I was like, I don't remember this. Like I thought this section was all uphill and then there'd be like a flat that we were running. And I was like, I don't want to run. I want to hike. Like, why is there a flat here? Or like, there's one final uphill before like you officially drop like 4,000 feet in the last like 6-ish miles of this race. but you've already descended like 2,000 feet, and then you've got like a 500-foot climb. It's like a 13-minute climb, and you totally forget that it exists, and you're like, oh crap, we have to go up this big hill now. So an out and back is great, but you definitely like completely forget what you ran, 12 hours ago. But I will say that like I wanted to do a 100-mile race or like a local big race on, quote unquote home trails, because that applies like a different style of pressure. Like I think that sometimes racing locally is honestly the scariest type of racing, because you like have this weird internalized pressure of like, well, this is my community, like I have to perform for them, or like I'm like one of the local like hitters, like I should be able to like do well here or win this thing or whatever. So I think there's like some interesting pressure applied at local races that like it's totally internal, like it's not like it doesn't come from anyone else, like it's something that I think we create for ourselves. But I got to experience pressure and racing without having to travel internationally, without having to fly across the country. Like I literally slept in my bed Thursday night in air conditioning, which was great. And then we like woke up early and we started driving over to Easton at like 5:15 a.m. So that we can make it there for like packet drop off. Because everything was in the morning of the race. We were starting at 8 a.m. So yeah, we like left Seattle at 5:15, rolled over to Easton. We're there by 6:15, etc. So it's like it was really nice and convenient to race on my home trails, but it was this kind of balance of pressure applied by it being a local race without having to do the heavy lifting of going all the way to Europe for that 100-mile race pressure, etc. So I think it was good practice for hopefully some future endeavors.
Nice.
And I had all my friends out there cheering, and it was so special. And then all my friends were pacing my other friends that were racing or running and crewing. And so it was like when Yitka, who I like only kind of know, we've been texting, we're going to run together some. Our schedules just don't always align. But like my friends were pacing her. And so when they came like flying by me, like I was standing still, it was like my friends cheering for me and like Yitka cheering for me and me cheering for her. And then like Amelia's crew were like, that she put together, 3 weeks ago, were like my friends as well from the area. So it's like we all were like, and they were yelling at me. And it was those local experiences are really cool, where it's like, oh, my brother came out to the halfway point with his cat, like random friends of ours came out to the halfway point who I weren't expecting to see there. Like it was because it's 45 minutes from town. And so it was really, really cool to see a bunch of friends.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's also like a really special part about it. Obviously, I mean, you can have that with anyone because we know everyone at all these races, but still it's like it adds just like a little local flair, and like it makes it so special. But yeah, so I guess like because I mean, we knew you were training and your training was going well with all like the intervals I remember like when you first talked about that you were doing like run intervals, and you're like, my lungs can take this, but my legs, like they're learning to turn over fast again. So how did that training build and block, how did it go? How did your body hold up? How was it harder physically or mentally? Yeah, just kind of tell us about that.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm in I'm still like lower volume than I think I've been historically in the past, which is not bad. I think it's fine. I also think that like it's really easy to like look at mileage instead of time and be like, oh, like a 60-mile week here is like an 80-mile week in San Francisco. And I have to remind myself that like a 60-mile week in Seattle, like in Issaquah, is a 80-mile week in the Headlands, just like due to the nature of our terrain for the most part. Like you have to work for flatter stuff here for sure in a big way. Like we have a lot of hiking. You want to train for a hiking race? We got you covered. Yeah, you want to find the gnarliest stuff to go up and down? We've got you covered. So I think it's like recognizing some of that and just getting comfortable with it. But yeah, I did my first this spring, like this block has been the first time I've been able to do intensity on my feet since getting hurt in 2021. So it's been like 2 years of like not being able to do like anything more than like light strides, basically. So being able to do like LT style intervals or tempos and that kind of stuff, like haven't been able to do that because that's been the thing that's like set my adductor off, which has been part of this like bone stress injury pattern, like in and around my pelvis. And so that was really cool. It was like really, really fun. I've like been working hard with my PT to manage and mitigate. I go into the gym like a former cross country skier, and I just like want to lift the heaviest shit, and just like I end up hurting myself because I'm like, yeah, like put all the plates on the bar, let's go. And I'm like, okay, Corinne, you like don't lift that regularly, and it's been a hot second, so you can't do that. So I had to like work with my PT to like scale stuff appropriately to make sure that I was like doing the things I needed to do to be able to hold up in training. And then we also got creative with my coach, Adam St. Pierre, I did a lot of, some of my longest days were actually like, instead of one long run, it was a multitude of runs, kind of like cluster running, which Hillary, I think you've done some of as well, where it's, I did, I did 3 2-hour runs over the course of a day, or I had like a day at Western States week, where like just running in around things. I think I did like 3 or 4 runs over the course of the day. Like I went for a run, and then I joined Keely for a run, and then I went for another run with friends, and then I finally did a shakeout, and it was like, a 28-mile day, but it took 4 runs to get it in, type of thing. So while I don't think that's ideal per se, I think for 100-mile training specificity and like making it work, it worked. And I also think that like when I was doing some of those shorter long runs, but having more throughout the day, I had less like breakdown. And so I ran with better form, et cetera, and wasn't like really falling apart in, hour 5 of 6 type of thing, as I like, because I was breaking the run up. So that was really, really good. But yeah, trainings looked a little bit different than it has in the past, but I feel like I'm finally, I go out the door to run, and I'm not like, will my body work today? Like, it's kind of like, cool, I can go for a run, and life is pretty, like, I can trust that my body's going to do what it's supposed to do for the most part, like 9 days out of 10.
That's a really cool feeling. I mean, I think that's really tough. I'm gonna kind of like hop around a little bit, because I think this is relevant to a question that I want to ask. But I mean, we were talking about like, DNFs, right? And a little bit earlier with in our conversation in the results section, but trusting your body again. It's a huge milestone to overcome when you're able to train and feel like you've trained adequately and prepared for this race. But then like come race day and something happens, right? Like you've had this happen. I remember specifically in TDS, your body was like, nope, right? It was like,
yeah, hard no.
Hard no. And like you made the right call to, to listen to that, to stop. And something, similar happened in Madeira, where it was just like, you're listening to these cues that your body was telling you to like, okay, like this is enough. Like we're not ready yet. So I'm wondering if there was any of that fear going into or even a moment, right? During this race, like of that journey of like trusting yourself again, where you had to be like, okay, what is this? Is this like a normal 100-mile pain, or is this something else? Like, did you have to combat with any of that?
I feel like I feel like I went into this one like really confident in my body, of just like knowing that it was going to be okay. Like TDS last year, like in hindsight, I shouldn't have started. Like I knew that. Like I like didn't feel good about starting, but like talked to my support system, and they were like, you should just do it. Like if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. That's fine. Like you can drop, you can finish dead last, doesn't matter. Like just like let's get to the start line, let's do it. And I like in hindsight know that I should have listened to my body and just not started that race. And TDS was like, and then Madeira was like a prep into this, where it's like I feel like that was a stepping stone to get here. Like I wasn't quite ready for the full day at Madeira, but it was definitely like that still was a confidence booster for Cascade Crest, which might seem weird that a DNF was like a confidence booster, but I made it through 53 miles with a ton of vert, like relatively like fine. Like I felt like I got more out of that race than I deserved from like a training perspective, and knew that would serve me well moving towards Cascade Crest and any other future goal. So yeah, it was interesting. Like going into this, I think because of those previous experiences, like I didn't have any of the fear I had this time around, like I did before TDS last year. And then I feel like my build into Cascade Crest, like off of Madeira, felt really relatively smooth. Like still some hiccups, like I like threw my back out one week and like, etc. There were definitely some craziness that went down, but I didn't at any point, I wasn't like, okay, like, let's see what happens with the pelvis. I was like, okay, like, we're going to go run a 100-mile race type of thing. Like things are going to happen out there, but it wasn't like a, okay, body, are you sure you got this type of like sensation at all?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And that's also like, I mean, that's a huge win. That's amazing, right? Like, cause that can be really scary. It's almost like sometimes I feel like in these races, we can try to forget that feeling of like, what is just being really tired and like,
Mhm.
what's more than that. No, so I think that's awesome. And that's like super good to hear, but, I want to hear more about the race. Specifically, you said you shared a lot of miles with Amelia, and that's got to be so cool, right? Because it's like sometimes in these hundreds, they can just get so spread out. You're just like you spend hours and hours alone. Actually weren't that far behind her at the end, so it's like seemed like you guys shared a lot of miles. And I read on her post something about like you keeping her entertained in the tunnel, which I do know which tunnel this is. I've cycled through this tunnel. It could get quite dark.
Oh, it's very, you need a light. It's like a 2
Yeah.
mile long tunnel.
It's really long. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, can you kind of tell us just about the race and like just generally like how it played out, and we can kind of get into more specifics like fueling and other low moments and things like that.
Totally. So it's funny because it's like this really cute little start. It's like very much like grassroots, but it's like a race that's been around for a long time. Like it's got a lot of, I understand why people, there's one dude there who finished just ahead of me who he did his first Cascade Crest at 17. And this was his 18th Cascade Crest.
Whoa.
So people keep coming back to this thing. Like Yitka, it's her fifth finish, fourth win. Like this is a race people do time and time again. And that you understand why when you're out there. Like it's a really special race. But we start, and I'm so used to these like stupid European starts where like if you don't run a 6-minute mile, like you're going to get trampled. And like we start and it's like Brandon and Elon and I at the front, like running 6:45 pace. And I'm like, oh, like I guess I don't have to run this fast. Like we're not going to get run over by anyone. Like we can chill out a little bit. But we started on like a rail trail for like a mile and a half. So it's like just cruiser miles. And like, well, take the easy mile while you got it, etc. And so like I was like leading immediately, like not intentionally, just like that's the way it shook out. And you start climbing immediately too. Like I think the first 12 and a half miles have 6,500 feet of climbing. And there's about 23-ish thousand feet of climbing, 23 to 25-ish thousand feet of climbing in this race. But you get, 6,500 feet in like the first 12 miles, which is a way to start a race for sure. So like naturally it was just like very, I think of the women on the podium, I think I'm probably the strongest hiker of the bunch. And so like just naturally gravitated towards the front of the race. The PCT that's more rolling, like Amelia was super strong on, and then some of the like longer descending Yitka just like throttled us on. But like quickly was at the front and just like had a pack of guys that I was running with, like chit-chatting with, like having a great time. It was very, very fun to have like some people just to like cruise along with up some like very fun, beautiful trail. And then Amelia and I like made official contact with one another because we were, I think, only like a minute or two apart over the first 20 miles. Like I think I was just ahead of her for the most part, but like just out of sight for a lot of that. But we came through we made contact with one another, I think coming into Tacoma Pass around 22 miles. And so we came into that aid station together where we both had drop bags. And it was starting to get hot. And so we both took a little bit of took a moment to like make sure we were getting ice on us. She left that aid station right ahead of me, and I like left right behind her hiking, like trying to eat a bit. And we kind of leapfrogged from there. Like if it was hiking, I'd bridge back up to her. If it was like more of a long downhill, because she has like 6 feet long legs, she would like just like smoothly run away from me on some of the downhill stuff. And we did that all the way until the Hayak mile 50 of the race, like just like us running together, us running apart, us running together, us running apart for that entire time. She was running with a broken pinky, which we discussed in the last episode. And so she was descending. I don't think she loves technical descending to begin with, but she was being a little bit cautious too with her finger. And it's kind of this like horribly chonky downhill on your way to the tunnel, because it's like they literally like string ropes through the trees and you're just kind of like ping ponging between trees on your way down. And so I closed really quickly on her right there and actually stopped to cheer on the lead guy coming up the hill. Like I let go of the ropes so that he could have it, and like stepped off to the side and like gave him a cheer, and then got down to the bottom and closed to, I was like, oh, it's really cool. Like Amelia and I can come into Hayak together. Like if I close down this like, 60-second gap, like we can come into Hayak like side by side, which would be so cool. And Cascade Crest to have like the top two women like at the 51 mile mark, like the halfway point, like together. And so close to her in the tunnel, we both like accidentally pulled the nipple off a water bottle. We each like within 30 seconds of each other, we're trying to drink from a water bottle, pulled like the nipple off the top of it. So just had like water, or in my case, heat, like just shooting out everywhere in the dark. And like there's like bikes coming by us, and like there's the men are coming back towards us with pacers as well. And we're just like both just like kind of like losing it in this tunnel, and like close to her, and we like run that stretch in together, and we're just like, you know, kind of cracking jokes and laughing our way into Hayak, like come into that aid station together. And then I think I get out of we both stopped to change shoes because we'd gotten so much stuff in our shoes on that like really loose rope descent. So we both stopped to change shoes. I get out of the aid station just ahead of her. She doesn't pick up a pacer there. She picks up a pacer at mile 69, I think. But she leaves just ahead of me, and I lead her like back up the climb all the way to the next aid station. And at that point, like my stomach's a little bit off, and we can talk more about lows here in a second. But essentially at that aid station, I was like, Amelia, you should go. Like, I just need to take a second to fix something. And so at that point, like she, you know, like I stayed there for another minute or so. And so that was the gap that remained for a while. Was like, I was a minute or two behind her because I just took a second to like try to reset my stomach. And then in that next section, Yitka, who was probably like 10 minutes down at us at Hayak, comes flying by, like isn't stopping at aid stations. Like, you know, this is the Yitka, you know, who's like, she's won this race many, many times. And you're just like, oh, okay, like there's clearly a reason why she's very good at this thing. So she comes flying by me, like I'm standing still. Her pacer's cheering for me. She's cheering for me. I'm like sort of dropping my pacer on this section because it's kind of like technical, gradual downhill, but it's like all very like rocky and rooty. And like need a little bit more time at the next aid station because my stomach is like really upset at this point. And so, but we're passing all these people because it's this out and back. So we've got all these runners coming at us, and they're like, oh my God, like the three of you are like within 2 minutes, like amazing work. And we're like, yeah, we know, thanks. Like, just like, yep. Mm-hmm. And so like that probably lasted, you know, I think all the way until Stampede Pass, like mile 70-ish, like that's kind of what that gap held at. And then I took an extra time there to eat some noodles, to try to get calories in because I was running behind, and then left with Steven, for his first time ever pacing me in an ultra, and proceeded to like, we're up this climb, and he's like, hey, Corrine, like you need to eat something. And I was like, I don't want to. And he's like, no, you need to eat something. So I try to eat a gel, and I proceed to like vomit up everything I've eaten in like the last hour, and like everything I've drank in the last hour. So I'm like vomiting. My husband, who's never paced me in an ultra, is like, wow, this is something. And I was like yelling like bon voyage noodles, because I was like vomiting up the noodles I'd eaten. Like everything was like coming out. It was not great. But in that moment, and I like laughed about this on Strava or something, I was like, oh man, like in my head, I was convinced only the winner gets a sweatshirt, and like had a moment of panic being like, I wanted one of those sweatshirts. Like now I'm not going to get one. Like that's kind of a bummer. I started eating saltines at the next aid station, which I've never had saltines in a race, which sounds like the driest, most horrible option ever. But I was like, oh, when you're sick, you eat saltines. Like this is fine. But yeah, it took a while to come back from that low moment. And that's, I think I needed to I went from spending like 90 seconds at aid stations to like spending like 5 or 6 minutes at every aid station, just because I needed to like physically stop in order to eat anything or drink anything. And so we just kind of like lost a ton of time in that probably like a 12 or 15 mile section where like I needed that to reset, and then like picked up Matt Mitchell to pace me into the finish, like the final 22 miles. And by the time we got up like our first big climb out of there, I like was feeling more and more like normal and good. And we actually ran like a really good back 15 miles of the race. And at the end and I still was taking more time at aid stations. Like I stopped at the 16 mile to go aid station or 18 mile to go aid station, and like they fed me a quesadilla with instant mashed potatoes in it, and it was like the best thing I ever had. And I didn't really want it, but they're like, what are you gonna lose? Just like eat the freaking quesadilla. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, oh, this is actually tasty, like I'll have another piece, and cuddled with a puppy there for a second. And then we like took off from there. And at the next aid station, like they had bacon. And I was like, I don't want bacon. But they're like, okay, we've got broth. Like, do you want broth? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, okay, we have to heat it up for you. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't want broth then. And then Matt's like, what are we going to do, Corrine? Like, what kind of rush are you in right now? Like, just just wait a couple minutes to have some stupid broth. And I was like, fine. So I'm like in a blanket at this aid station, like waiting for broth and like cracking jokes with aid station volunteers. And then from there, we ran like a really awesome final 12 and a half miles into the finish. And it's like funny in hindsight, like I have so much respect and like I'm just so blown away by Yitka and Amelia's runs. And it just like goes to show you like how critical like all these little pieces are. Cause like if I look at our moving times, for example, like my moving time is the fastest of the three of us, but I completely fell apart and I had to like spend time at aid stations and I had to like stop to vomit and I had to do all these little things that like, yeah, 0-minute miles add up. And in this case, like it added up to, you know, like being an hour back type of thing. So it's like that, it's just like, it's really cool. Like to me, it's really exciting to be like, okay, like I moved well when I was moving, but I also had some moments where I was not moving at all. And that is like where I see like the opportunity for growth and lessons learned. And like, I will get to take that stuff forward with me into the next, anything I race next of being like, okay, I'm willing to try X, Y, or Z thing earlier. I'm willing to recognize what I messed up and like try to address that ahead of time, etc. So I think it was like overwhelmingly, I'm really happy with the day, even though it definitely was like far from perfect. And I had to fight some demons. And my pacer, Nikki, who's seen me like happy go lucky at Western States twice, was like, yeah, that's like the deepest I've seen you like in the like concentration bubble. Like you just like were very much like, I'm just surviving right now. Like nothing will come in or out because I am surviving. So we did it. We made it to the finish line. We were sub 24 hours. It was my slowest 100-mile ever by like 45 minutes or something because Leadville was my slowest previous. But it's, yeah, it was everything we could have hoped for. And the volunteers were amazing and insane. And the Easton junior cadets, like the junior firefighters, had a milkshake and hamburger stand at the end. And so we waited around for milkshakes and had milkshakes before we went home and showered and napped. But yeah, just like a very special race with very, and like incredible people volunteering on course, running the course, etc. So feel very like, as I posted an Instagram post today and I was like, gratitude, like I'm taking a lot of gratitude away from like this experience in the race.
Aw, that's amazing. I love that race cap because it is. It's
That's
like
my monologue.
oh, it's so good because it's like a series of these moments, right? But then they like you live a day out there. It's like like you live a lifetime, like in the course of these 100-milers. But I'm curious. I mean, you said you did get I only have a few other questions. I think you like kind of you just talked about everything just so succinctly. But what about do you have any like? I know you said you got a little bit behind on fueling, but do you have any like numbers associated with like your fueling facts? This is the Keely question. She wants to know your fuel facts.
Keely's not going to be pleased with me.
Oh, no.
I don't know exact numbers, but I did better than Madeira. So Keely gave me a hard time, rightfully so, after Madeira when I was like, I physically had to stop in order to eat. I ate better than that. But what I botched this time was hydration. In which I needed, it was definitely warmer earlier than I think I was willing to like play into. And I just think I was behind on hydration. And I think it was like one of those very like, it wasn't like a, whoa, we're behind on hydration. It was like a very slowly turning the dial in the wrong direction on hydration. And I think I need to play with some other salt solutions. Like I'll drink whatever's out there. Like they had heat and I don't mind heat and it's got some calorie in it, it's got electrolyte in it, etc. But I think there were moments where I wasn't drinking enough fluid and I didn't have any plain water on me. And so I like by the back third of the race, I was like craving water. I've never craved water in my entire life. Like never in a race, never in my day-to-day life. Like I'm kind of a chronic underhydrator type of thing, but I know when I don't hydrate well, I don't thermoregulate well. And I know when I don't hydrate or thermoregulate well, I don't eat well. And so I think that's like kind of what set the stomach off down the road was like just being behind on hydration, probably between mile 20 and mile 60 or mile 20 and mile 50-ish or something like that, where like it took me a while to catch back up or like find some sort of equilibrium. But ate really well early on, like feel like I did a really good job eating in the first 40-ish miles. Like I'm fine getting to mile 80 and then needing like Coca-Cola from there to the finish, but I would have loved to have better fuel coming in between like 45 and 65 miles. That would have been a little bit more delightful. And like played with a bunch of different product. And I think that was really helpful. But I want to experiment a little bit more with some more like some more potatoy style things early. And so I can hope, I think I had palate fatigue too. Like, I think a lot of my like nausea was associated with palate fatigue, where I was like, I don't want this, therefore I can't eat it. And I think if I extend akin to like a road cycling race, like in the Tour, right? They're eating like rice balls and that kind of stuff for the first 3 hours of the day. And then they switch to gels in the last 3 hours. And so I think if I can prolong my palate fatigue by adding some different things earlier in my race, when my stomach is a little bit more game for it, I think I probably just had like a lot of acid in my stomach, and needed some cheese earlier. And I think that would have helped neutralize my stomach situation. But I was adamant that a quesadilla was going to be awful. And it turns out, no, I was actually pretty darn tasty. So don't fear the quesadilla.
It's the cheese thing. Remember, it's like Katie Scheid and Camille Bria, so the cheese sandwiches in UTMB, and then our coach Adam St. Pierre, I was feeding him quesadillas all up handies during Hard Rock.
I know. There's something magic about cheese. I'm sorry for lactose intolerant, but there's something magic about cheese that helps with like stomach acid, I think, late in ultras. So
yeah, the calcium.
Yeah. So love it, apparently. So I'm going to be playing with some stuff that's easy to prep internationally as well, or easy to find internationally, kind of generically, I think will be kind of key there. So I'm going to play with some instant potato stuff, and I'm going to play with some like sandwiches, essentially, like really like the fluffiest white bread and cheese situations. So that hopefully tortillas, whatever, I can play with that for future iterations. But yeah, I think it was a hydration. I feel like in Madeira, I hydrated well, but ate poorly. Here, I ate pretty well. Like I ate an Uncrustable at mile 22, just like putting a whole Uncrustable in. Love Uncrustables. Smuckers. You're doing something right. They're probably, I don't know, they're probably like an evil corporation somehow, but like white bread, peanut butter and jelly, like had no issues with that type of thing. So I think it's like just being a little bit, once again, it's just like lessons learned, mistakes made. But it's nice when it's your stomach and it's not like, oh, I just wasn't fit enough, or like, oh, my quads fell apart, or like, oh, like I was just really tired. It was like, oh, I like ran a really strong last like 15 to 18 miles. Cool. Like I can figure out this other piece of the puzzle. So the goal is to make my triceps stronger, because my triceps got really tired using poles. Haven't been hitting the gym hard enough. And then some more tricks to play with hydration and nutrition wise. So I'd give myself like another, like, I don't know, probably B-, C+. That seems generous. I don't think I failed nutrition, but I definitely
I think you're gonna B- for at least like trying new stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like you were willing to
Professor
try
Keely.
the quesadilla, you're trying all these other things. I feel like the C grades get if you become stubborn and you didn't feel well.
Yeah.
You know.
No, my pacer Nikki after the fact was like, yeah, I think I should have tried to get you to eat something different earlier. And I was like, I don't think I would have listened to you. Like now I would. Like next time you pace me and I'm like this, well, hope I'm not like this, but if I am, like I'll listen to you, because you'll be like, remember the last time you did this? But in that moment, I was like, no, you can't make me. Like we gotta. I hadn't vomited yet, I think, when I was with Nikki, and so that was probably part of it. I was more willing to get weird
it's
after
so
the vomiting
easy to
started.
be that way when you're tired and bonky, you know, because like Western States 2021, that was me. Like after 100K, people would be like, you need to eat, and I'm like, nah.
No, I don't
like,
want
what
to.
do you want? I'm like, nothing. And it's like,
I don't
no,
like
just
food.
Suck it up and eat something.
Who was I talking to? I was talking to someone in an aid station, and I was like, oh, eating is the worst, right? And it was like another guy who was out there running, and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty overeating right now. And I'm like, this is awful. But they had like potato soup. They had all sorts of stuff that would have been good if I had just like taken a moment to like not be an idiot. So if you're listening to this, don't be an idiot. Practice your nutrition, know your strategies. And then also like when things go awry, these aid stations are really good and like they want to take care of you. And it turns out like there's a reason why quesadillas are at ultra aid stations. It's not just because we like cheese. Like I think there's a method to the madness here. There's something about it that works.
Yeah. But I guess the final question I have for you is what's next besides some more horizontal time?
Yeah, I'm gonna take things pretty darn chill. My toes need to recover a little bit. I've been walking and it's nice to have a dog because like they require some movement. And they just kind of tow you on a leash, which is nice. But I'm going to go to Cape Town and I'm going to do the 100 mile at Ultra Trail Cape Town at the end of November. And I'm breaking my 4-year Olympic cycle of hundreds, and I am going to do a second one this year, assuming that like recovery and everything goes well. Like so far, everything seems good, mentally, energy is good, etc. But my plan and hope and goal is to be in Cape Town, and it is to hopefully do the 100 mile there. If something physically is a little bit off, but I feel like I can get the fitness for the 100K, then maybe I would do that. If I need to shorten it, but I would really like to do the 100 mile there after watching you run it last year. So that is the current plan, is to go to Cape Town.
So cool. Maybe I'll be there too. Who knows?
Come hang out with me.
Oh my gosh, that'd be great. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, you can. Well, if you just want to come feed me potatoes, I am open for potato feeding as well.
Well, I think, oh yeah, definitely. I mean, is the 100K or the 100 miler on the same day? No.
The 100 mile starts
Yeah.
Friday and the 100K starts Saturday.
They overlap though.
Yeah, we overlap. I remember Drew Holman just like passed me like I was standing still when he was running by.
You're like, I'm trying to run down this downhill.
Oh man. Oh, so cool.
I thought I was running fast. Never mind.
I know. Like I'm moving, but he's flying.
Yeah. It's that was Kelly Wolf passing me in Madeira, not this year, but last year. I was like, oh, you're running.
Yeah.
She was on the 50 mile. And I was like, I am not. I'm making it. You are running. Yeah. It's a different world. But heck yeah. Everyone come to Cape Town. That's my plea. Come hang out with us in South Africa. My mom's coming.
Oh man, I know. Actually, my parents, after seeing me go there, they're like, "We're gonna go on vacation in South Africa." I was like, "Just come for the race."
Yeah, my mom's gonna fly in like Wednesday of race week or Tuesday of race week, and then we're gonna stay in Cape Town till the 5th of December.
Oh, that's amazing!
Oh, nice.
I'm very excited. So I'm going on vacation with my mom. So
Woohoo!
love your moms.
Well, I guess, Corrine, do you want to wrap this up? We've got some society slamming to do.
We do, and I what I've been doing is I say, Keely, you put all these wonderful society slams in here. What do we have? Who's been sliding into our DMs? The first one's a really easy question.
The first one's an easy question. I think I'm gonna jump to the second one first.
Okay.
So we have a shout out from a fan about last week's episode with Amelia Boone. She basically said the following: "Thank you so much for the open and authentic conversation with Amelia. My husband and I have decided not to have kids, and even though I'm 100% certain that's the right decision for us, I still have a lot of sadness and grief surrounding this decision. Listening to this episode, I think a lot of that grief stems from shame and fear for not living up to society's standards for me as a woman. Thank you so much for helping to normalize that womanhood does not have to equal motherhood." And so I'm sure
I have like chills.
I know. I'm sure that's like echoed by a lot of listeners. I saw a lot of different posts come through about people like resonating really well with Amelia's story, as well as like comments on the post. So thanks for coming on, Amelia, and changing the narrative around this with us, because there should be no shame in that decision.
Yeah. I love you. It was so good to see her this weekend. She's phenomenal.
I know. Another one we got, sorry for those of you who we haven't responded to yet, but I plan to get most questions into the Society Slam. But we have a question that's an easy one for us to answer from someone who recently moved to Seattle. They moved there from Tahoe, and they're an avid casual trail runner, and they're trying to find other trail runners. And so they asked if we had recommendations or running clubs in the area / favorite trails around Seattle. So I thought we would just tackle this one with Corrine being the expert of the area. And then me and Hillary can kind of go off this and just say favorite places in our respective cities too, in case anybody's listening who needs ideas around Portland or Boulder too.
Sweet. Yeah. So if you're new to Seattle or you're in Seattle and you want trail runners, a couple things you can do. One is Seven Hills Running Shop in over by Discovery Park. They host I think it's like a Thursday night trail run. Rich Lockwood, who's phenomenal, is there. Oftentimes Kim Carmel, who finished 4th in Cascade Crest, she runs there a lot. Like, it's just a really good group of humans, and they run out of the Seven Hills Running Shop in Discovery Park on a weeknight run. And then the other big one is actually the Cowgill Collective. We had several cowgillers, I don't know if that's what you call them in plural, outrunning Cascade Crest. But they host like 4 or 5 runs throughout the week. They host like a Monday evening run, they host a Wednesday evening workout, and those are generally both like in the city. Thursday mornings, they call them Thirsty Thursdays, and they host like a migratory trail run in the morning. So sometimes they're at Tiger, sometimes they're at Cougar, sometimes they're in the city, like sometimes they're at Squawk, like they like bounce around. And then they have an evening, like an evening pub run on Thursdays as well. And then they oftentimes also have weekend runs, either demo runs, or they like go camp somewhere for the weekend and go on a run Saturday and Sunday. Like they're super active. They're a huge group of humans. They are all very, very welcoming and very encouraging in the community. It was so cool to see so many of them out there. This weekend, running, racing, crewing, supporting, etc. But they have a really active like social media presence. Like their Instagram account is generally how you figure out what they're doing for the week. Like they post their running routes, links to Strava, etc. You probably just follow them on Strava. I think they probably have like a Cowgill Collective club there. There's a Trail Runner magazine piece about them, so check them out. They're probably like one of the best bets to like get tied into the trail community in Seattle. I personally love to bop out to Issaquah because the Tiger and Cougar trails are just so wonderful. But if you're in the city itself, there's lots of really local, like great local parks. Like Discovery Park is one of my favorites. I live closer to like Seward Park and that kind of stuff in the South Seattle zone, which is a combination of like paved and dirt stuff. But if you want trails, you're gonna head over 90. You're gonna head east over to Issaquah, and there is like the panacea of every variety of trail you could ever want. So good on you. I don't know if I'm apologizing for you moving from Tahoe to Seattle or not. I personally love Seattle, but I know it's a big move. So those are my recs. Reach out if you have any more questions. You can also slide into my DMs, or Keely will pass along your information, because I'm happy to dive deeper into any specific Seattle recs for you all. What about you guys? Portland, Boulder, what's up over there?
Yeah, I mean, I think in Portland there's a lot of different groups, and they're not like, it's not like the Cowgill where there's just a ton of people in one group, which I love the Cowgill for that. I've met them at a couple of races now and they're so fun. But Portland, like Go Beyond has a group run, Weiss Wolfpack has a group run led by
Cowgill has a Portland group now, I think.
Oh, well then I'll look into Cowgill being Portland based. But there's a ton of good spaces to run in Portland. You can, if you come visit, like just run in Forest Park from the city. You don't even have to drive anywhere. And you can run like a 100-kilometer run if you really want to and not hit the same trail twice. So like, you know, plenty of options in the city. And then just a short, like 40-minute drive out of the city, you can hit the gorge trails. And those are pretty gnarly, a lot more climbing. And they stay snow-free like almost all year round, especially the lower ones. And so there's options kind of everywhere. And so, yeah, the Portland area is obviously a great spot to run to.
Love it. What about Boulder?
Yeah, I mean, well, Keely and I, we met at Rocky Mountain Runners, so that's a good group. But there's also a lot of stuff, like when I first got into trail running, I was actually living in Denver at the time, and I was in Denver Trail Runners, and they kind of, there's some nice routes where you can, there's a like big city, but then you can kind of go to like 30 minutes. And that was kind of how I got introduced into trail running. And then we also have like the Runners Roost. They also host, they're pretty active. They have a lot of events and like a group run I think it's every Tuesday night, but then they also have like, they host like speakers and like little fun events, like Kelly from RAD, the Real Athlete Diet. She is there a lot, feeding athletes after the group run, and for like the little videos and like chats that they host. Yeah, so there's and then it's like usually once you're there, then you kind of find out about all of these other groups, and like you can kind of find your people, and then then you're like a part of the community.
And then you're there, you're stuck. You can't go anywhere else.
And then Brian Metzler, there's like he also started another running company, In Motion Running. They have also some run clubs there. So
cool. Amazing. Boulder was one of the most welcoming groups I've ever met when I moved there. It's so cool.
There's like Boulder Trail Runners. There's a ton of them.
Yeah. And you just have to find the right kind of vibe for you. And there's definitely different vibes. Different groups have different vibes. And you said to figure it out. They're generally all very welcoming, but it's like it's a vibe check for sure. It's like, what kind of energy do I need? What kind of seriousness do I need? What kind of like fun do I need? Is there iterations of this that's better for me, etc. So, or you're getting outside of your comfort zone, and that's a big deal. Like for me personally, like too many people make me anxious. And so I've had to like be like, okay, I'm going to this Cowgill run. I am ready for 40 people. type of thing. But you have to like, I have to physically like prepare myself for that because it can be a lot just to like be like, I don't know who I'm talking to. Panic. So I understand the panic that ensues with trying to meet friends and be part of these running groups. So good luck to you all. If you have more questions, send them our way. Hillary, it sounds like you ran into Anna Mae Flynn this weekend.
Oh yeah, I was gonna add something in this, and this is kind of related to like a future episode that we're probably gonna do. But I ran into her. She's been kind of overcoming like a hip injury, and she's been kind of working back and
Like
running.
post-surgical.
Yeah, so I saw her and just kind of like chatting about that. I was actually on my way back from like a little bike run adventure and I saw her and Gus Gibbs running together. But yeah, she was basically just really appreciative, and like she was we were talking about kind of like my multi-sport stuff, and you know, how she'd appreciate the perspective of like how, you know, you tackle that to like emphasize being like a lifelong runner and kind of what that means with cross training, or, you know, targeting certain races, and how many times a year that we should actually, you know, target to race and like big events. And so yeah, I think this is gonna kind of fuel, we've talked about it in an episode later in the year. So
yay, I love it. I love it. I love it. Anna Mae, we love and appreciate you as well, and we know that you are on a journey back. It sounds like with Western States is the goal. I'm very excited about. Like, I want her to be fired up, and it sounds like she is. So heck yeah on that front. Well, I think that's it for today, y'all. We hope you enjoyed our little Cascade Crest recap and deep dive and everything else that went along with it. Keep sliding into our DMs, questions, comments, concerns, anything you got, we'll take it all. And until next time, we'll see you out on the trails.